The message was simple. This is what happens to those who steal drugs from me. But to send that message, a 20-year-old gang leader known as Little J decided he needed an audience. And he needed a demonstration. The demonstration would involve 3 young cousins, a live stream, and a level of brutality that would horrify the entire country of Argentina. This is the story of that demonstration, and how the darkest parts of the criminal underworld use the technology we use every day to broadcast a message of pure terror. Argentina. It's a country that's all about passion. You've got the tango, of course, and then there's soccer, which for them is basically a religion. The centre of it all is the capital, Buenos Aires. It's a beautiful, massive city, with these old grand buildings that can make you feel like you're in Europe. But, like any huge city, there's another side to it. Just outside the picture-perfect areas are the slums, the places they call villas miserias. In these neighbourhoods, the police are rarely seen, and the government's rules don't mean much. And that's where a different set of rules, and a much more brutal kind of power, takes over. To understand what was lost in this vibrant, complex country, you first need to understand the world of these 3 cousins. They lived in a working-class suburb, a place of tight-knit families and limited opportunities, where the joys of youth were a precious escape. The older cousins, 20-year-old Marina Verde and 20-year-old Brenda Del Castillo, were on the cusp of true adulthood. Their days were a familiar mix of responsibility and dreams, lightly navigating part-time jobs while making time for friends, music, and each other. For them, a promise of a party wasn't just an event, it was a bright spot, and the offer of a few $100s wasn't just a bonus. In their world, that kind of money could solve a dozen small problems. Then there was 15-year-old Laura Gutierrez. She was the youngest, the one who looked up to her older cousins. Her daily life was supposed to be simpler, defined by the rhythms of high school. For Laura, Marina and Brenda were her window into a more exciting, grown-up world. She trusted them completely. Their lives were woven together by the unbreakable bond of family. It was this deep, ordinary, and beautiful trust that made them so vulnerable to the extraordinary evil that was waiting for them. On September 19th, 2025, that invitation came. The 3 cousins were reportedly lured into a van, but there was no party. Instead, they were taken to a house in the Florencia Varela suburb, a place the media would soon call the House of Horrors. For 5 frantic days, their families searched for them, but on the 5th day, that hope was extinguished in the most gruesome way imaginable. Police discovered the remains of all 3 girls buried in the yard of that house. They had been dismembered. The details of what they endured are difficult to process, but they are crucial to understanding the intent behind this crime. The goal was maximum cruelty. Autopsies would confirm they were subjected to a horrific ordeal of beatings, suffocation, and extensive mutilation before they died. The grandfather of 2 of the girls, Antonio Del Castillo, told reporters, "You wouldn't do what they did to them, to an animal." Brenda's father, Lionel, shared that he couldn't even identify his own daughter's body. The abuse was that severe, and as the country reeled from the brutality, the most chilling detail was revealed by authorities. The torture and murder had been live-streamed. It was a broadcast, streamed live to a closed group of about 45 social media users as a terrifying warning. The man who allegedly orchestrated this entire horror was Little J. What unfolded on that live stream was a documented nightmare. According to sources familiar with the investigation, the footage was not a quick, chaotic clip. It was a prolonged, systematic process of torture. The video reportedly showed the 3 cousins, still alive, being subjected to horrific acts of violence. The perpetrators used blades to inflict severe wounds, and, in a calculated act of terror, reportedly engaged in the amputation of the girls' fingers and toes. This was combined with severe beatings and repeated acts of suffocation, all while the camera was rolling. The entire event was a production designed to send a message, which was made terrifyingly clear by the voice of the gang leader, Little J, who was heard on the stream declaring, This is what happens to those who steal drugs from me. So, the big question is, why them? Why were these 3 specific girls targeted? According to authorities, this wasn't random. It was a calculated act of revenge, and the connection between the cousins and the gang likely started the way these things often do, in the local party scene. It's believed that through friends or social events, the cousins crossed paths with Little J's organisation. From there, police believe the connection turned into a transaction. Gangs like his often use people on the fringes, people who don't look like criminals, to act as drug mules, asking them to hold or transport a package for what seems like easy money. The leading theory is that one or more of the cousins were recruited for a job like this. They were allegedly given a shipment of cocaine to hold, and somewhere along the way, that shipment, or a large part of it, went missing. Now, we'll probably never know if they were actually guilty. Maybe they took a cut, maybe they were framed, or maybe it was all just a terrible misunderstanding. But for a guy like Little J, the truth didn't matter. The accusation was enough. A missing shipment made him look weak, and that was a direct challenge to his power. If he let that slide, he'd lose control of his territory, so he decided he had to make an example of them. A demonstration so brutal and so public that no one would ever even think about crossing him again. To understand the predator, you have to understand the world he built for himself. At just 20 years old, Tony Jansen Valverde Victoriano was not some street corner dealer. He was the young, ambitious and utterly ruthless leader of a drug gang, operating out of the Zabaleta neighbourhood. His daily life was a 24/7 performance of power and paranoia. His job was to maintain order, not through rules, but through fear. His entire existence was built on a foundation of intimidation. Trust was a liability, and any sign of disrespect, no matter how small, was a direct challenge to his authority that had to be crushed without mercy. The live stream of the girls' torture wasn't some sudden, crazy idea. It was the ultimate expression of his daily business model, broadcasting terror to maintain control. In a clear sign of how far his network reached, Little J and his right-hand man were not arrested in Argentina. They were captured in Peru, in a coordinated international police operation. As news of the crimes spread, the outrage over the live stream boiled over. The fact that this gang was using modern technology to broadcast their brutality was a new kind of terror for the public. The anger spilled into the streets. Massive protests led by feminist and human rights groups erupted across Argentina. They carried signs with a powerful and specific phrase: narco-femicide. In Argentina, femicide, the killing of a woman because of her gender, is already a recognised crime, but the protesters were arguing this was something new. Narco-femicide was their term for the strategic use of extreme violence against women by drug cartels as a weapon to control territory and enforce their brutal rules. This tragedy also became a political firestorm, highlighting a deep divide in the country. The government had expressed a desire to remove the specific crime of femicide from the law. Activists argued that this, combined with austerity policies that cut social services, created a power vacuum in poor neighbourhoods. A vacuum that narco gangs were all too happy to fill, using this kind of spectacular violence to establish their own order. The mastermind, Little J, Tony Jansen Valverde Victoriano, and his right-hand man, Matias Azorio, are currently being held in a Peruvian prison, awaiting a complex international extradition process to bring them back to Argentina to face justice. And the justice they face will be severe. They won't just be charged with murder. Prosecutors are expected to pursue a string of charges, including kidnapping, torture, and belonging to a criminal organisation. But the most significant charge will be aggravated homicide under the classification of femicide. In Argentina, that charge specifically acknowledges that the crime was a gender-based act of violence, and it carries the country's maximum penalty: life in prison. Thank you for joining me for this incredibly sad and terrifying story. Before we go, if you found this video informative, please consider subscribing to my channel Truly Chilling. A like on this video also really helps us reach more people. Thank you so much for your time and for your support. Stay safe, and I'll see you in the next one.